Oh, yay, the live stream is working. Awesome. All right. Give me like 2 seconds and then otherwise you'll hear my voice twice and it would be quite annoying.
Yeah, there's two Nisanis.
There is. Interesting. It's okay. 2 is better than 1. Okie dokie. So, all right, so let's start with question number 1. We're going to recap algebra. So Ravi is 3 years older than Sanadi. The sum of their ages is 25. And how old is Ravi? So what we're going to do is give Sanadi an unknown, because we don't know how old she is. We're just going to call her age as being X. So we're saying Sanadi equals X. And if she equals X, then that means Ravi must be X plus 3 because he's 3 years older, right? So we have S equals X, and Sanadi is X years old, and Ravi is X plus 3 years old. But we know that the sum of their ages is 25. So if we add X and X plus 3, so if we add Sanadi's age and Ravi's age together, they should equal 25. So 25 equals X plus 3. And then what we're going to do next is simplify, right? So X plus X equals 2X. You can combine like these unknown variables together. So X plus X equals 2X, but you can't add the 3 to that. So you just have plus 3 afterwards. So 25 equals 2X plus 3. And the next thing we're going to do is simplify that a bit further by moving the plus 3 to the other side of the equation. So currently it's on the right-hand side, but we're going to move it to the left-hand side. So if on the right-hand side it's plus 3, when we move it to the other side with the 25, it'll become minus 3. 25 minus 3 gives us 22. So that means 22 equals 2x. And if 22 equals 2x, then 1x must just be 11. So 22 divided by 2. So x equals 11. That's Anadi's age. And if Ravi is 3 years older, he would just be 11 plus 3, which gives us 14. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions?
No.
No? Oh yeah, and there's definitely another, if you find this way easier, you can add, so yeah, Ella said that she added the difference, which is 3. So 25 plus 3 gives you 28, and then you divide that by 2 to give you 14, which is, yes, quite quick. And if that works for you, then absolutely, that's another way of doing it. Okay. If there are no more questions, I'll move on to the next one. Okay. So question number 2, PK and Melvin are sharing a sum of money. PK receives $20 more than twice the amount Melvin receives. If they receive a total of 140, how much would PK receive, right? So we're going to say that Melvin has X amount of money, and that means PK has 20 plus 2X amount of money, right? And then if they have a total of 140, that means 140 equals X plus 20 plus 2X. So I've written in brackets, kind of separating both people. And then what we're going to do is simplify. So we add the X and the 2X together. So 1X plus 2X gives you 3X, and then the 20 stays by itself. So you have 140 equals 3X plus 20. And then when we move that plus 20 to the left-hand side of the equation, it goes from being plus 20 to minus 20, and 140 minus 20 gives you 120, right? So 120 equals 3x, which means 1x is just going to be 120 divided by 3, and 120 divided by 3 is 40. So that means Melvin has $40, and that means PK would have twice that much, which is 80, plus another 20, which gives you $100, giving us an answer of C. Does anyone have any questions about question number 2?
No.
No? Okay, awesome. Moving on to question number 3. Here we're going to recap speed, time, and distance. So you probably learnt in class that you can draw like a little triangle and you split it into 3 with distance on top, speed on the left, and time on the right. And then that gives you these 3 equations. That distance equals speed times time. Speed is distance divided by time, and time is distance divided by speed, right? And you can find those 3 equations by looking at the position of the letters in the triangle and if they're like one above the other or if they're next to each other. So in question number 3, we were told that Ardra and Dashan decide to have a friendly race. Ardra runs at a speed of 8 meters per second, whereas Dashan runs at a speed of 6 meters per second. If they both run for 20 seconds, how far apart will they be from each other? So the distance is, we're going to use the distance equals speed times time equation because we're asked how far apart they are. So first we're going to find the distance that Ardra runs, which is going to be her speed as being 8 meters per second multiplied by the time, which was 20. So the distance that Ardra runs is 8 times 20, which gives us 160 meters. Then we look at Dashan's distance. So he goes at 6 meters per second for 20 seconds. So 6 times 20 gives us 120 meters. Then to find out how far apart they'll be after 20 seconds, we just subtract 160 by 120. So you subtract their distances from each other, and that gives you 40. So they'll be 40 meters apart after those 20 seconds. Any questions about question number 3?
No.
All right then.
Oh.
No? All right, question number 4. We have Andy's train and he's going a distance of 240 kilometers at a constant speed. And if it takes 3 hours to complete the journey, what is the average speed of the train? So for we're asked what's the average speed. So we're going to use the speed equation, and speed equals distance divided by time. So speed equals the distance being 240 divided the time of 3 hours. 240 divided by 3 gives us 80, right? Because if you didn't know how to do that, you could say that 24 divided by 3 is 8, and then you chuck that 0 back on. So we have the answer as being 80 kilometers per hour, which was C. Any questions? No? Okay. Question number 5. This is about chance and probability. We have Achut visiting a casino and he bets his entire life savings on a bet. He has to get 4 on a dice and pick a red card from a deck of cards. What is the probability of Achut rolling a 4 on the die and drawing a red card? Right? So for this question, we're first going to find out what's the probability of rolling 4 on a die. So because there's only one 4 on a die and there are 6 faces, we're going to say the probability is 1/6. And then the probability of drawing a red card is going to be 1/2 because half the cards are red and the other half are black. So half the cards are red, so the probability of drawing a red card is going to be 1/2. So the probability of rolling a 4 on a die and getting a red card, what you're going to do is multiply those 2 probabilities together. So you're going to multiply 1/6 by 1/2, which gives you 1/12. Someone asked how many cards are there in a deck, and the answer is 52. There are 26 red ones and 26 black ones. Any questions about question number 5?
Can you just leave it on there for 1 minute?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just let me know when you want me to move on.
Okay. You can move it now.
Okay. Yeah, so question number 6. This Alia has a rectangular bar, chocolate bar. She ate 3/4 of the bar and then divided the remaining piece equally among herself and her 2 friends, Nisani and Ravi. Each person receives 1/3 of the remaining bar. What fraction of the original chocolate bar does each person receive? So Alia ate 3/4, which means she only has 1/4 of the bar left. And then she splits that 1/4 bar between the 3 people. So if each person gets 1/3 of the remaining bar, that means it's 1/4. So that's how much had left, multiplied by 1/3, which gives us, if you multiply 1 times 1, that's 1. And then 4 times 3 is 12. So Nisani, Ravi, and Alia get an extra 1/12 of the chocolate bar. And then I've also drawn on the right, if you wanted to, instead of doing it like the fractions way, if you think it'll be faster and easier for you to just draw it out, then yeah, you split the rectangle into 4 and then split one of those quarters into 3. Are there any questions about question number 6?
No.
No? Okay. All right, moving on to question number 7. Okay, wait, let me just erase some of this from the previous class. Okay, so Rashini is building a thruster for her rocket. The perimeter of the base is 31.4 meters. Find the volume of the thruster if it is 10 meters tall.
Yeah.
So a thruster is just a cylinder, and we're told that the perimeter of this cylinder's base is 31.4 meters. The perimeter of the base. So the perimeter of the base is going to be the circumference of the circle. So the circumference of a circle, we're going to say that's 2 pi r, right? That's the formula, with pi being 3.14, and then it goes on for infinity, and then r being the radius of the circle, right? So 2 pi r equals 31.4, right? And then we know that pi is 3.14, which if you multiply it by 10 gives you 31.4. So the easiest thing to do would be to cancel that pi out. So if you divide 31.4 by 3.14, that gives you 10. So we know that 2r, so 2 times the radius, is equal to 10. And if 2 of the radius equals 10, or like the diameter equals 10, that means just 1 of the radius is equals to 5, right? So the radius of the circle that forms the base of the cylinder is going to be 5, right? And then we want to know what is the volume of this thruster. So the volume is equal, the formula for that is pi r squared h. So it's pi times the radius squared. So in our case, the radius is 5. So 5 times 5 is 25. And then the height, we're told in the question, is 10 meters. So we're going to multiply 3.14 by 25, which is 5 squared, and then the height, which is 10. So 3.14 times 25 times 10. So what we're going to do first is do 3.14 times 10. So 3.14 times 10 gives you 31.4, and then 31.4 times 25 gives you 785 meters cubed. And if you didn't want to do like the actual maths of 31.4 times by 25, what you can do is round the 31.4 to the nearest 10, which is 30, and then do 30 times 25, which would give you 750. And then if you look at your answer options, the answer option that's closest to 750 is 785, which is D. So you didn't even really have to do them like the actual proper working out for that one. If you just round it, and then you can find the closest answer.
Wouldn't for some questions, like if the answers are very similar, you couldn't round it off?
Or then you'd have to just like do the multiplication by hand.
Yeah, I just did multiplication.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, can I move to question number 8?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to go through writing too?
Yeah, we can. I think we're going quite ahead of schedule, so absolutely we can go through writing.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So question number 8, we have a bag of marbles, and we're told that the ratio of red marbles to blue marbles is 2:5, which means for every 2 red marbles there are 5 blue marbles. If there are a total of 35 marbles in the bag, how many of them are blue? So what we're first going to do is add the 2 components of the ratio together. So we're going to add 2 and 5 together, which gives you 7. And then we're going to divide the total number of marbles we have by 7, which is that number we got by adding the ratios together. So 35 divided by 7 gives us 5, which is like a scale factor that we can use to multiply our original ratio by to find out how much of each type of marble we have. So 2 times 5 is 10, and then 5 times 5 is 25, which means that if you have a total of 35 marbles, 10 of them are red and 25 of them are blue. So that gives us D as our answer. Does anyone have any questions about question number 8? No? Okay, awesome. All right, then we can most definitely move on to writing. So if I'll go through narratives first, and then we'll go through persuasive. So in terms of narrative structure, there are 5 like distinct sort of steps, and it sort of goes like a bit like a mountain. So first you have your orientation. So that's where you introduce your characters and their desires, so what they want, what they're going to like try to achieve in the story. And then we're also going to introduce the setting. So that's just going to be like where they are, if they're in a jungle, if they're at school, if they're at home, you know. You can use your setting, and you can describe that using like imaginative language and using your like 5 senses and things. And then the next step is rising action. So that's where the tension increases, and that's done by problems and conflicts. So maybe your main character begins to get bullied, or if there's someone going on an adventure, they start to find issues, right? So that's the excitement, the stress, the whatever's going on, it gets slightly more interesting, right? And that's shown by like it's going up in like our mountain of the structure. And then finally we have at the top our climax. Yeah.
Is this gonna be part of what's it called, the GATE exam?
Yeah, so in the GATE exam, you have your 4 sections, and one of those sections is writing, where you either have to write a narrative or a persuasive.
Thank you.
Well, you don't have to write. You don't have to write a persuasive or a narrative. You can write any type of writing as long as it fits the.
Oh,
Yes, absolutely. But we tend to see that the people who get the highest scores tend to do narratives. So if you learn to do a really good narrative, then it's likely that you'll get the best results. Yeah, but you can absolutely write whatever you like. Someone asked what you have to do for homework. So yeah, for homework, you have to do the reading comprehension, abstract, and the writing. And the writing prompt is, if you flip to the page after abstract, it's like toilet paper with faces on it.
Smiley faces.
Yeah, smiley faces. Yeah. So yeah. next is going to be the climax. So that's where the tension reaches its peak, right? That's where it's most exciting. The reader is probably going to be like, is it probably going to work out in the is what's going to happen work out in the main character's favor, or are they going to be defeated, right? Like, it's really interesting, maybe stressful, exciting, anxious, who knows, but like that's what it means by tension's at its peak, right? It could go either way, and the problem is at its worst point, and at the climax, the solution could present itself. Like the main character or whatever might see a way out of whatever's their big problem, right? And then next you have your falling action, which is when you apply solutions to the problem and conflict, right? And things start to get solved, right? Because as you went along, like, you didn't just have one big problem, there were probably lots of little problems that happened along the way. So those small problems start to get resolved and things start to look better, right? And finally, you have your resolution, which is where you've resolved your problems and you really enforce your moral or message. Because, as we said, hopefully you learned in class about the 3 rules of creativity. The third one is that it must have a message or moral, right? So you can really use the resolution and have that lasting impact on your reader by really saying, you don't actually say like the moral of the message is, or the moral of the story is, but you can just enforce by whatever happens to the character and all the characters and what happens in the situation can really support the moral and message you've been putting in throughout the text, right? And just a note is that the problem is anything that comes between the character and the character's desires, right? So if in the orientation you had your character as being a new kid at school and all they really wanted to do was fit in, a big problem could be that they couldn't make any friends, or that they were being bullied or something, right? So you're directly contesting what you said at the start was your character's desire. Okay? Does anyone have any questions about the narrative structure?
No.
Awesome. Okay, then we'll move on to the 3 rules of creativity. So the 3 rules of creativity, the first one is that you don't write about the literal image. So if you got a story about like a balloon about to burst, right? I don't want you to write a story about like anything to do with like some sort of balloon like that's like full of air, but you can see like, what does this balloon represent, right? What could this balloon mean? How could I apply like a human? If this balloon was actually a human, what would them being about to burst mean?
Isn't
right?
wasn't that this year's GATE prompt?
Was it? I don't know. I didn't actually see this year's GATE prompt.
It was like a cactus, like a balloon about to pop on the cactus, like that.
See, if I got that prompt right, I would see like a balloon is like, that would be the person, right? And I would say maybe they're very sort of like free and they're doing like whatever they like, floating around. And the cactus could either be a really mean person who wants to destroy that really happy, positive, optimistic person who's represented by the balloon, or the cactus could be like a very dangerous situation and the moral or message of the story could be about like strange danger or something. So the balloon could be like a child and the cactus could be a sort of dangerous situation for the child, and I'd write a story about a child like sort of innocently going into sort of maybe a dangerous situation, and then maybe the moral of the story could be like stranger danger or looking out
Maybe
for
you could
others.
say that even the most calmest and nicest things can also come to an end, like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an awesome idea from that prompt. Okay. So yeah, so don't try to write about the literal image, just like how this week's prompt is about toilet paper with smiley faces. I don't want to hear a story with a focus about toilet paper and smiley faces, but think about maybe what toilet paper means. How does society think about toilet paper? How do you think about toilet paper? What is toilet paper used for? I like to do like a little brainstorm and pick apart like the individual components of a picture, and then hopefully come up with a good metaphor that would get me the most points.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
For the toilet paper with the smiley faces on it, could you write what it means?
What I think it means, or do you want to write about what it means as for your thing?
Yeah, in my own like perspective.
Yes, but instead of writing what it means, you should think about what you think it means and then write a story about what you think it means.
Yeah.
Use that as your inspiration. But yes, absolutely. That's exactly what would get you the higher mark.
Thank you.
No worries. So yeah, after making sure that you try to find a metaphor, higher message behind your prompt, you also want to make sure your story is feasible, which means like, is it likely? Does it sort of like realistic? You don't want things that are going to randomly happen that either make life like super, super easy for your characters or make it really like unrealistically difficult. Like you want things to happen to your characters as a result of other things, not things just randomly popping out of places, right? Like instead of, say someone was walking and then they were just walking on a very busy, popular path, and then suddenly they took a step and then they fell into like a really big hole, right? That's sort of highly unfeasible because like, where did this really big hole come from? But if you said earlier in the story that this person who was walking on the path had like an enemy because this person had done something bad to them, so they followed them around to notice that every single Monday morning they walk this path, and then that Monday morning, they like really before that person was walking on that path, they went there, they dug a hole, they covered it, and then until that person sort of came nearby, they put like cones around it, preventing anyone else from falling into the hole. But when they saw that person was coming near, then they got rid of the cones and made it easy, and then he fell in the hole. Like one of those is more feasible than the other, just because you explained how the situation sort of came to be, instead of the situation just randomly popping up and not being explained very thoroughly. So
Can you also say like, maybe like as an idea, like the council, there's been a lot of, well, if it's an area near like the a very an area with lots of trees, and there's a lot of wolves there, and you could see that the council wanted to put a lot of holes and traps because the wolves were getting everywhere, and then the person fell down the hole, one of the wolf holes.
Absolutely. See that as long as you explain how the hole got there, because obviously it's very unlikely that the hole just magically appeared out of this place. So as long as you explain why things are happening, then absolutely you'll get good marks for the feasibility or the realistic part. Well done. And then finally, the third rule of creativity is having a moral or message in the story. So lots of people use sort of kindness, working hard, being patient. There's lots of more like morals, I think. I don't know if you in primary school, probably you're in primary school, but do you have something like if you demonstrate like a virtue, then you get like a little voucher thing from your teacher? Is that something that you have in class?
Well, we have grow tokens, like we have like our grow values, like gracious, like those, and if you represent one of those, if you do one of those things, you can get a grow token. Or sometimes you, in my old school, if you did really good work, you can go show the principal in the office.
Yeah, so just like all those things that are written on your grow tokens and things, like those virtues like kindness, patience, teamwork, working with others, and even just like general society things, like maybe if you work hard, then you'll be rewarded, stranger danger, there are lots of things, right? Try to incorporate one of those into your story and make sure that like the actions of your character and your characters like demonstrate the value in that moral or message. And then that would make a lasting impact on your reader, and it also demonstrates to whoever's marking your writing that you actually put a lot of thought and like you wrote with a purpose, with like intention, and that would demonstrate like your gifted and talentedness to the writer. So by adding that extra layer of having a moral or message would get you higher marks. So if you can start to put that into your writing now, you'll eventually get better and better at it. And obviously, maybe if it's your first time doing it, it might be a bit tricky, but as you go on, you'll see how just to do it better and better until when you sit the GATE exam, you'll see the prompt, you'll think of a metaphor, symbolism, idea that would work really well. You do your little plan, you follow the narrative structure, and you incorporate a message and moral, and you get good results, hopefully. So just briefly, because it's here, I'll go through the marking key. So in the GATE marking key, if you haven't, not the GATE, but the Loyola marking key, which we have seen to reflect how things are done in the GATE exam, we have 30 marks for creativity, 14 marks for structure, and I think 6 marks for English conventions. So for creativity, there's topic implementation. So that's in regards to what you did with your prompt. If you didn't write anything related to your prompt whatsoever, then you'll likely get a low mark. If you manage to find a metaphor and symbolism, like sort of aspect from the prompt, and then you wrote your story based on that, then you'd get a higher mark. If you write just about what's in the picture, you'd probably get a very average mark. Then in terms of morals and messages, if you don't have a moral or message, 0. If you have like a really well-developed moral or message throughout the text that's enforced by the resolution, then you'd get higher marks. Then in terms of realism, that's to do with like the feasibility. Does it make sense? Do the actions sort of lead to things happening, or do things sort of happen randomly and in like a very unlikely way? Right?
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in our prompt right now,
Mm-hmm.
it said just smile. Do you have to write about like your symbolism as just smile, or is it that like just for helping you and you can do something else? Like it said just smile here.
Yeah, so if you saw just smile and then, sorry, wait, is your question about like the metaphor aspect, like to get the message, do you have to include the just smile, or can you write it just about the picture? Is that what you mean?
No, I mean like just say like if you want your prompt to be, your story to be about just smile, do you have to do your story about that, or can you also write something else just as even ugly things that you think are bad can also be happy like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be as simplistic as just smile. If you can take it to the next level and add more layers into it, like you said, then yeah, absolutely, you can do that. As long as it's related to the prompt, then it should be just fine.
Okay.
Okay. Then we have the structure. So that in terms of layout, that means you're writing in paragraphs. Try not to write one big block of text. It's very difficult just to like read, and also it makes it easier for you to have, if you have like approximately 5 sort of chunks, then you can like have your like 5 steps of your narrative structure. So by having paragraphs, it makes it easier to read and better to differentiate the different stages of your story. Then narrative structure, that's just having your orientation, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. There are 2 marks for each of those. If you maybe your time management is not that great and you don't get to finish your story, then you might miss out on a few marks from narrative structure. Someone asked if we have to use the just smile part or can you just use the picture? I think you can just use the picture because, I mean, just smile is pretty, there's not much you can do with it.
I
Like, I mean,
watched a
but
video
you can-
on the Department of Education, and they said even if you won't lose marks if you don't finish your story, as long as the message is clear and most of your story is done.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I feel like lots of people try to like the moral or message is made clear by the resolution, right? Like that's like before the resolution, things are still like there are problems. So if you don't get to the part where you fully enforce your moral or message, then you can like lose marks on both potentially. But yeah, if it's pretty clear through your text what's going on and the message is clear, then you can definitely get marks, but you might not lose as many.
If you don't finish the story, don't you get less marks on narrative structure?
Yeah, you would. Yeah. And then just in terms of English conventions, it's just a few 6 marks. If you have any spelling mistakes, the general policy is that you get 0 for spelling, as long as you have your punctuation, grammar, vocabulary. I mean, you've been learning these at school for a long time, but sometimes with the stress, like you have only 30 minutes to write it, come up with an idea and write a full story. Some people, they sort of slip in terms of those. And if you work on just making sure you can write quickly in sort of this high stress environment and maintaining your punctuation, grammar, spelling, and vocab, then you get the higher marks. And you can also learn, if you like read a lot of books or like check the internet a lot, you can also learn different vocabulary.
Wait, how much good good kind of words do you have to like write to get the vocabulary mark?
A lot.
I think so. For vocabulary, there's the marks are 2. So if you use like very simple, like year 1 or 2 level words through the whole thing, then maybe you'd get like 0 or 1 mark. But if you use like more like interesting, longer words, but don't use words that you don't know the meaning of and just put them in randomly. So make sure that any interesting words you do use, that they make sense in the situation. But if you put in a few that enough to impress your teacher, then they could probably definitely give you the vocabulary mark. If that answers your question, hopefully.
Wait,
Mhm.
what about for GATE, like the actual test?
So the thing is that they don't release like the marking key, so you don't know what the exact thing is, but you don't want to put too many like really long high vocabulary words if the rest of your thing is regular, right? And then it would just be a bit intense. But if you can like sprinkle in a few each paragraph, and as long as it makes sense and it's not like too random, I mean, because it depends on like the story, because you don't have like a dictionary or anything with you, right? So they just have to be words you know in your head, right? So I think that there'd be a limit, but as long as you use good words that make sense and have some variety in them, then yeah, it could definitely work.
Basically, if like not to put like too much, like your story can't make sense, but just enough so it'll be good.
Yeah, it's a bit like a Goldilocks situation, but I think once you practice a bit and then you can see sort of how much you can fit in, and when you read your own work, if it makes sense to you, then yeah, just that sort of thing. I'll just move on to persuasive. So for persuasive, you can either use Teal or Oreo. Oreo, I think, is like a slightly more simplified one. So Oreo stands for opinion, reasons, explanation, and then opinion again. So you first use your opinion, that's where you say how you feel. And this Oreo is how you structure a body paragraph. So in a persuasive text, you have your introduction, your 3 body paragraphs, and your conclusion. And sometimes you can include a rebuttal, which is where you state the opposing side's, maybe one of your opposing side's arguments, and then you rebut it, or like you say why it's not good, right?
We do it in school.
Yes, hopefully all do that at school. So one of the ways you can format, sort of do the order in your body paragraph is using Oreo. So first you say, what's your opinion? That's sort of like your topic sentence. Then you explain your reasons, right? That's sort of like your evidence. Then you explain your reasons. So you explain why your evidence is important to your point and why it supports your point. And then finally you state your opinion again, where you reiterate like why what you said was important and why it's good. And you really just seal in the deal. So that makes sure that the reader doesn't, like, it's all just focusing on the same thing, because sometimes when you're writing and you get sort of confused and whatever, and then if you end on like a drifted note, then the reader might not fully just stick to your vision, right? So if you reiterate your side of the argument both at the start and the end, it makes you seem really confident and committed, and also make sure that the reader understands what you're going for.
Wait, so if you have, with your topic, if it's a really obvious topic like to do a persuasive and you do a narrative, do you lose marks for that?
No, because I mean, for most of the, like, they just give you a picture and a sentence, right? So if they had a picture, okay, like a really common one for persuasives is cats and dogs, right? I feel like everyone's done that in primary school at some point. So if you were given a picture of like a cat and dog fighting, and then you wrote a story about two people with different personalities, like a more cat-like personality and a more dog-like personality, and then how they maybe were fighting for a long time, but they figured out how like working together is better for both of them, then I think you could just get like pretty high marks compared to like writing a persuasive about cats versus dogs. So it just depends on how you take it and what you do with it. So yeah, I think we've covered basically all the content that we had to do for today's Zoom class. Did any of you have any more questions?
No.
No. No.
Okay. Then I will.
No.
Wait, can I just screenshot it?
Do you want me to zoom on a specific part?
Okay.
Which part? Just tell me where you would like, and then.
Like